There comes a time, not on the clock, but in the heart, when the soul whispers, enough. Enough giving yourself away in exchange for validation. Enough handing your peace to the opinions of others. Enough letting your value be dictated by circumstances or your light dimmed by someone else's shadows. And in that quiet, sacred moment, a moment not seen by the world but felt by eternity, you are invited to take back the power you gave away. You were not born to be at the mercy of the world. You were born from something eternal, for something eternal. And though you have forgotten your source 1,000 times in 1,000 forms, your source has never forgotten you. It has always called you home. And home, my friend, is not a place you find outside. It is the holy place within where your power has never left. It only waits for your return. We live most of our lives believing the lie that our worth must be proven, earned, defended. We construct a self from scraps, what others think, what the past taught us, what society rewarded, and then we hand over the keys to that false self to anyone who smiles at us, anyone who criticizes us, anyone who offers approval. And in doing so, we make silent agreements with fear, agreements that say, I'll abandon my truth if it makes you more comfortable. Agreements that say, I'll dim my light so you don't feel insecure. Agreements that say, I need you to choose me so I don't have to choose myself. But here is the truth, unshakable and luminous. You cannot lose your power. You can only forget it. You cannot destroy your light. You can only hide it beneath the rubble of other people's expectations. The power you seek is not in becoming more, it is in remembering that you already are. And when you remember who you are, not as a name, not as a role, not as a story, but as a presence, as the awareness behind the thoughts, as the soul behind the eyes, then no one can take anything from you again. Taking back your power is not about control. It's not about shouting louder or winning the argument. It's not about proving anything to anyone. That's still the ego masquerading as empowerment. No real power is quiet. It is soft and undeniable, like gravity. It does not need to announce itself. It simply is. It cannot be threatened because it does not depend on anything external. True power is rooted in being, not doing. In awareness, not reaction. In presence, not performance. When you reclaim your power, you stop asking for permission to be whole. You stop auditioning for love. You stop begging the past to make sense. You stop outsourcing your peace to things that were never meant to hold it. You stop trying to get from the world what only your own soul can give. And how do you reclaim this power? You begin by noticing where you lost it. Not with judgment, but with gentle curiosity. Where in your life are you still trying to earn approval? Where are you still believing that someone else's opinion of you is more accurate than your own knowing? Where are you still afraid to speak, to leave, to shine, to stand tall because somewhere deep inside you believe you are not enough unless someone tells you so? You cannot change what you do not first acknowledge. And when you look at these places, not with shame, but with the eyes of love, something miraculous begins to happen. You start to remember. You start to see through the illusion. You start to feel the embers of truth flickering in your belly, calling you home. You are not weak because you gave your power away. You are human. You learned what you learned in order to unlearn it. And now, with the grace of your awareness, you are invited to come back to yourself, to pick up the pieces of your power one by one and hold them in your hands like sacred treasures. Because that's what they are. Not weapons, but wisdom. Not armor, but truth. The world will always try to convince you that your power lives outside of you. In status, in money, in relationships, in how many people clap when you speak, but the soul knows better. The soul knows that real power lives in the silent choice to love yourself when no one is watching. In the brave decision to walk away from anything that dishonors your spirit. In the unwavering trust that you don't need to chase what is a lie, and you only need to become who you truly are, and what is for you will rise to meet you. You are not here to be anyone's echo. You are not here to fit in. You are here to remember the divine music that plays through you, the music that cannot be silenced, even if you have tried. You are here to stop rehearsing a version of yourself that makes others comfortable and start living as the version of yourself that makes your soul exhale. There is a power in you that no one can touch, not because it is protected by walls, but because it is protected by truth. And truth does not bend to opinion. It does not shrink in fear. It does not vanish when challenged. It stands like a mountain in a storm, like the stars in the void, like love in the face of rejection. Taking back your power is an act of remembering, not resisting. It is the choice to stop leaking energy to people, to stories, to roles that were never meant to carry the weight of your spirit. It is the decision to turn inward, to silence the noise, and listen not to the mind, but to the soul. The soul doesn't shout, it whispers, and it never shames. It reminds you. It reassures you. It gently points the way back, not to a new you, but to the real you. You've looked everywhere else. Now it's time to look within, to sit with yourself, not as a critic, but as a friend. To ask not, what should I do to be enough? But what part of me forgot that I already am? Because when you heal that part, when you embrace that part, when you stop running from the wounded places inside you and instead become a loving witness to them, that is when you reclaim the pieces of power you left behind. The people who hurt you were not stronger than you. The heartbreak did not break you. It broke open what needed to be healed. The rejection was not a verdict. It was a redirection. Every moment you thought you were being diminished, the truth is you were being refined, and now you are rising, not in spite of what happened, but because of it. And this, dear soul, is the miracle of awakening. Nothing that happened to you has the authority to define you. Only your spirit does that. And your spirit is untouched, unbroken, unchanged. Your spirit remembers who you are when you forget. And it is patiently waiting for you to remember with it. To take back the name you were given before the world gave you labels. To take back your peace from the mouth of fear. To take back your voice from the hands of silence. To take back your power, not as something you must fight for, but as something that was always yours. You don't reclaim your power by becoming louder, you reclaim it by becoming quieter. You reclaim it not by grasping, but by releasing. Not by proving yourself, but by remembering yourself. That eternal self that existed before you were taught who to be. That unshakable presence within you that has never left, even when you wandered far from it. It is still there, untouched by the storms of this world, waiting with open arms, not to change you, but to remind you of what was never lost. To take back the power you gave away is to finally stop negotiating with fear. It is to stop looking into the faces of others, hoping they will give you permission to be free. It is to realize, in a flash of sacred clarity, that the door has never been locked, that your chains were made of thoughts, not truth, that your prison was built with beliefs, not bricks. And in that moment of seeing clearly, you don't need to escape, you only need to wake up. You were never meant to carry the weight of everyone else's expectations. You were never meant to perform for approval. You were meant to live in alignment with the truth that pulses through your being, like breath, like blood, like stars in motion. You were meant to move as love, not for love. You were meant to express, not to impress. You were meant to be, not to become. What you gave away in the name of survival, your boundaries, your voice, your joy can be reclaimed not by force, but by forgiveness. Forgiveness of yourself for not knowing then what you know now. Forgiveness of others who, in their own pain taught you that love must be earned, and forgiveness of the story that said you needed to be anything but exactly who you are to be worthy. There is profound power in simply sitting still and saying, I forgive myself. Not because you were wrong, but because you were trying to belong in a world that profits from your disconnection. You were trying to find peace in places that could never give it to you. And now, with eyes of grace, you see that your attempts were not failures, they were teachers. Each one brought you closer to this moment, this miracle, this remembering. When you reclaim your power, you don't become someone else. You become real. The masks fall, the armor drops, the striving ends. And what is left is not weakness, it is divinity. It is the raw, holy presence of your soul, finally allowed to breathe in the open, finally free to take up space, finally free to speak its truth, not to dominate, but to liberate, not to wound, but to awaken. You see, the world has convinced you that strength looks like control, like stoicism, like independence at all costs. But real strength is soft. Real strength is open. Real strength is the courage to feel deeply and still choose peace. Real strength is letting go of the need to win and choosing instead to be whole. And you do not need to become strong. You only need to stop pretending that you are not. Your power is not in what you can control. It is in how you surrender, in how you stop resisting the truth of who you are, in how you meet yourself in the mirror each morning and speak not words of criticism, but of compassion, in how you choose over and over again to come back to presence, to silence, to stillness, to the sacred ground of being that is always here. The ego says, prove it. The soul says, allow it. The ego says, fight back. The soul says, let go. The ego says, you're not enough yet. The soul whispers, you already are. And the moment you stop chasing your wholeness and start resting in it, the game changes. The moment you stop striving to become and instead begin to remember, that's when you touch true power. You are not here to keep the peace by abandoning yourself. You are not here to play small so others feel big. You are not here to shrink your voice so others can be comfortable in their illusion. You are here to embody light. And light does not apologize for shining. Light does not dim itself to be accepted by shadows. Light does not seek permission. It just is. So let yourself be that light again. Let yourself shine, not for applause, but because it is your nature. Let yourself walk away from roles that ask you to betray your truth. Let yourself say no when your soul contracts. Let yourself choose stillness when the world demands noise. Let yourself come home not to a place, but to a presence, to your own presence. The power you gave away when you silenced your voice is returned the moment you speak your truth, even if it shakes. The power you gave away when you tried to please everyone is reclaimed the moment you choose integrity over approval. The power you gave away when you became a version of yourself for others is brought back the moment you decide to become no one but yourself. And the self you are returning to, that radiant, infinite, grounded self, does not need fixing. It needs remembering. It needs permission. It needs space to expand. And the moment you offer it that space, the false identities begin to fall away. The persona crumbles. The roles dissolve. And you are left, not empty, but full of presence, full of light, full of the divine essence that was always there beneath the performance. You don't need to take your power back from others because they never truly held it. They only held the illusion of it. The real work is taking it back from the thoughts that told you you were less than divine. Taking it back from the patterns that were rooted in fear. Taking it back from the unconscious agreements that said, if I just do more, give more, sacrifice more, maybe then I'll be enough. But beloved, you are enough. Not because of what you do, but because of what you are. A soul, infinite and holy, having a temporary human experience, a breath of the divine wrapped in skin, a being of pure presence, made not by the world, but by the infinite source behind it. To take back the power you gave away is not to shout it from rooftops. It is to live it silently in every breath. It is to honor your energy like it is sacred, because it is. It is to stop proving, performing, and pleasing, and start being. It is to know, not think, not believe, but know that you are whole, even when the world says you are not. And in that knowing, you find peace. In that peace, you find clarity. In that clarity, you find courage. And with that courage, you begin to walk differently, not with arrogance, but with alignment. Not with pride, but with presence. Not seeking, but radiating. Because power, true power, does not need to pursue, it attracts. It calls forth, it magnetizes. And when you are in your power, you no longer need to hold on so tightly. You no longer grip people, outcomes, identities. You begin to trust that what is for you will remain, and what leaves was never meant to stay. You begin to live open-handed, knowing that the universe does not take, it clears. It does not punish, it purifies. It does not abandon, it redirects. Always, always for your highest unfolding. This is the sacred invitation of your life, to come home to yourself, to release the lies, to drop the masks, to return not to an old version of you, but to the original one, the one untouched by pain, by fear, by distortion, the one who is still here, still whole, still powerful, beyond measure. And so you breathe, and in that breath, you remember. And in that remembering, you reclaim. And in that reclamation, you rise. And when you rise, you do so not to tower above others, but to finally stand with yourself. You rise not as an act of defiance, but of devotion to the truth within you that no longer wishes to sleep. You rise not because you are finished healing, but because you are finished pretending you are not already whole. You rise because something ancient and holy within you refuses to stay hidden any longer. This rising is not loud. It does not need an audience. It does not wait for applause. It is the sacred act of returning to what you never truly lost, the still center, the calm awareness, the eternal now. And in that now, you see clearly. You were never broken, only buried beneath the noise, beneath the shame, beneath the performance, beneath the stories that said you were too much or not enough or somehow wrong for simply being you. But those stories were never yours. You inherited them. You absorbed them. You carried them for years like heavy stones in your spirit, thinking they were truth. But now you see they were only echoes of someone else's pain. And you do not have to carry what does not belong to you. When you take back the power you gave away, you no longer measure your worth by how much you produce or how perfectly you perform. You begin to rest in the miracle of simply being. You begin to look in the mirror and meet your own gaze without apology. You begin to speak not to be heard, but because your voice is sacred. You begin to choose what feels like peace instead of what looks like approval. And what a beautiful power that is. To no longer need to explain your soul. To no longer shrink to fit into spaces that dishonor your expansion. To no longer negotiate your boundaries just to be accepted by people who have yet to accept themselves. This is not rebellion. This is return. This is not ego. This is essence. This is the sacred remembrance that your spirit came into this world with a mission not to impress, not to conform, not to survive, but to awaken, to love, to embody the divine. And when you remember that, the illusion of power that the world sold you begins to dissolve. Because real power is not in dominance, it is in presence. It is not in knowing all the answers, it is in trusting the silence. It is not in never falling, it is in rising every time, softer, wiser, and more open than before. You are not here to be powerful in the way the world defines it. You are here to be powerful in the way the soul remembers it, as love, as peace, as the quiet strength that flows like water through every crack in the illusion. You are here to be power, not as force, but as freedom, the kind that liberates others simply by being what it is. And when you live from that place, everything changes. You no longer chase love, you become it. You no longer beg for peace, you embody it. You no longer wait for signs, you are the sign. You no longer look outward for a savior because you become the one you were waiting for. This is not fantasy. This is not motivational fluff. This is the truth that lives beneath all other truths. This is the truth the soul has been whispering through every heartbreak, every loss, every longing. It has always said the same thing again and again. Come back to yourself. Come back home. You are the light. You are the way. So take back the power you gave away by stopping the search for it outside of you. Take it back by no longer asking for permission to be enough. Take it back by resting in the fullness of your being, even when the world tells you to keep striving. Take it back by honoring what you feel, what you know, what you are, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's misunderstood. Because every time you do, the illusion loses its grip. Every time you do, the false self crumbles a little more. Every time you do, the soul gets louder and life gets clearer. And the moment you stop trying to fix yourself and start witnessing yourself with compassion, you begin to understand that healing is not about becoming new, it's about remembering what was always true. The moment you stop running from your wounds and start meeting them with love, they stop being prisons and start becoming portals. The moment you stop performing and start being, the performance ends and the real you steps onto the stage. And the real you does not fear rejection because it no longer depends on acceptance. The real you does not fear failure because it no longer chases success. The real you does not seek to be special, it knows it is sacred. The real you does not need a reason to rest, to breathe, to shine, to love. It simply does because that is its nature. So breathe deeply. And with each breath, let go of what is not yours. Let go of the labels, the roles, the masks, the burdens. Let go of the need to be understood by those who do not understand themselves. Let go of the fear that your truth will be too much or not enough. Let go of the story that says you have to earn your worth. Let go of the belief that says power looks like control. And in that letting go, you return. Not to who you were before the pain, but to who you were beneath it. Not to an older version of yourself, but to the eternal one. The one who never left. The one who knows. You do not need to force this becoming. You need only to allow it. You do not need to fight for your light. You need only to stop hiding it. You do not need to convince the world of your worth. You need only to remember it, live it, embody it, and the world will reflect it back in ways you could never predict. Because life, you see, does not respond to who you pretend to be. It responds to who you truly are. It responds to your frequency, to your vibration, to your alignment. And when you are aligned with the truth of your being, that you are already whole, already worthy, already divine, you stop chasing life and start co-creating with it. This is power. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that sings. Not the kind that controls, but the kind that flows. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that liberates. And it has always been yours. There is something profound that happens when you stop waiting to be rescued and realize you were never lost. The power you gave away wasn't taken from you, it was placed in the hands of false beliefs with your silent consent. But now, something in you is rising, not in noise, but in knowing. And that knowing is your liberation. That knowing is your homecoming. That knowing is your true power. This is where the journey turns inward once more. Because real change does not come from rearranging your outer world. It comes from surrendering your inner world to truth, to love, to presence. And when you surrender in this way, you don't lose control. You remember you never needed it. Taking back your power means no longer reacting to life from the place of fear, but responding from the presence of love. It means recognizing that every trigger, every disappointment, every unhealed ache is not a punishment, but a doorway leading back to the part of you still waiting to be loved, to be seen, to be heard by you. You take back your power by meeting yourself in the very places where you once abandoned yourself, in the fear you silenced, in the anger you buried, in the grief you rushed past. You return to those parts like a gentle parent, not to fix them, but to sit with them, to be with them, to let them know, I'm here now, and I will not leave you again. Because the real power you seek is not power over others, it is power with yourself. Power that comes from radical self-honesty, from integrity, from no longer betraying your peace just to keep the illusion of connection, from refusing to trade your truth for temporary comfort, from learning to be alone without being lonely because your own presence has become your sanctuary. This is the liberation no one can give you and no one can take away. You may be wondering, but what happens to my life when I change in this way? What happens to the relationships I built while living from the false self? What happens to the roles I played, the expectations I carried, the systems I upheld with my silence? And here is the truth. Some things will fall away. Some people may not understand the new vibration you are anchoring into. Some chapters may close not because you failed, but because you healed. But this is not loss. This is alignment. This is not collapse. It is recalibration. And whatever is not rooted in truth cannot survive your awakening. Let it go. Your job is not to keep things together that were never meant to last. Your job is to stay true to your soul as it returns to its natural rhythm. Your job is to honor the sacred contract you made before you came into this body, to embody the light you are no matter what the world does with it. So you stand taller now, not with pride, but with presence. You walk lighter, not because life is easier, but because your burden is no longer self-abandonment. You speak softer, not because you are uncertain, but because your certainty no longer needs volume. You love deeper, not because you need someone, but because you are love, and love naturally extends itself without demand. And most importantly, you forgive. You forgive yourself for the years you spent pretending, pleasing, and proving. You forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know. You forgive yourself for the moments when you gave yourself away just to feel safe, seen, or wanted. Because you now know you no longer need to abandon yourself to be loved. You need only to return to yourself, to love yourself fiercely, unapologetically, unconditionally. When you take back the power you gave away, you realize it was never about becoming powerful in the eyes of others. It was about remembering you were never powerless in the eyes of the divine. You were never a victim of your life, only a student of it. And now, with eyes of wisdom and a heart made soft by the fire, you step into your true identity, not a role, not a label, not a wound, not a performance, but a soul, a light, a sacred being, here for a sacred reason. And that reason is not to strive endlessly, not to prove your worth, not to gather possessions or perfect appearances, but to awaken, to be, to love, to shine. You will still face challenges. The world will still ask you to forget, but now you will remember, and when you forget, you will remember again. That is the path. That is the way. It is not a straight line, but a spiral, always returning deeper each time to the truth that cannot be erased. You are enough. You are whole. You are home. So breathe, dear soul. Let this be your exhale. Let this be the moment you stop chasing and start receiving. Let this be the moment you take your life, your real life, back into your sacred hands. And as you do, may you walk gently but boldly. May you speak clearly but kindly. May you rest deeply, knowing you no longer have to pretend. May you live freely, knowing nothing outside you can add to what already lives within you. This is your return. This is your remembrance. This is your reclaiming. This is your power, and it was never gone. It was always here. And now, you are too. There comes a moment in every life when the soul whispers softly at first that something isn't right, that despite the things you've gathered, the achievements you've counted, the steps you've followed, something remains untouched, unawakened, unfulfilled. Not because life has failed you, but because your thoughts have not yet remembered their power. You see, you are not merely a body moving through the world. You are a field of consciousness creating it. And the lens through which you look at the world, your thoughts, is not a passive reflection of life, but the very projector of its quality. What you think is not just commentary, it's alchemy. You don't see things as they are. You see things as you are through the stories you've chosen, through the meanings you've inherited, through the emotions you allow to linger like smoke in the chambers of your mind. Your outer world is always mirroring the dominant vibration of your inner world. And your thinking, moment by moment, is the tuning fork. The universe, being eternally impartial, says only this: as you believe, so shall it be done unto you. You are not what the world calls you. You are not your name, your title, your reputation, or your fears. You are the thinker behind the thoughts, the dreamer behind the mask, the awareness, watching it all unfold, and waiting, always waiting, for you to reclaim your authorship of this life. Most people never pause to wonder, who is doing the thinking in here? And where did these thoughts come from? They repeat patterns like a song stuck on repeat. Songs of lack, of worry, of comparison, of judgment, never realizing that they are dancing to music. They never chose that their mind has become a house built by strangers, and now they live inside it, calling it truth. But thought is not fixed. It is fluid. It can be questioned, it can be healed, it can be elevated, and when it is, life itself begins to take a new shape. The quality of your life is not determined by the conditions you're in, but by the conversations you're having with yourself about those conditions. It's not the storm that breaks you. It's the belief that you cannot sail through it. Begin to listen, truly listen, to the voice that speaks just beneath the noise, the still, silent knowing that's always been with you. It doesn't shout, it doesn't panic, it doesn't echo the world's madness. It simply reminds you, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who chooses which thoughts get to stay. And that is the first liberation, to recognize that you are not a prisoner of your thinking. You are its master. But mastery begins with awareness. Every moment you catch yourself thinking a thought that limits you, a thought that shrinks your spirit or dim your light, is a holy moment, a spiritual opportunity. Not to shame yourself, but to remember yourself. To remember that no one installed that thought without your permission, and that now, in this breath, you can choose again. The quality of your life is not waiting at the end of some distant achievement. It is shaped, molded in the unseen furnace of your inner dialogue. Do you feed the flame of resentment? Do you pour gasoline on thoughts of fear, of not being enough, of being left behind? Do you carry the past into today like a sack of stones, repeating, "This is just how I am, As if your identity were carved in stone rather than breathed into being? Or do you wake up each morning and choose a new vibration? Do you speak to yourself with love before the world gets a chance to interfere? Do you plant thoughts of peace, joy, forgiveness, and water them with presence until they bloom into a life that reflects your soul? Most people treat thoughts like facts, but thoughts are just clouds passing through the vast sky of your awareness. You are not the cloud, you are the sky. And in that realization, you are free. Let me ask you gently, what have you been thinking about today? Because that's what you've been living. The world around you is echoing back the tone you set in silence, and nothing will change until the thinking does. So if you want to heal your relationships, change your thinking about connection. If you want to find peace, change your thinking about the past. If you want to create abundance, change your thinking about worth. And if you want to love yourself, change your thinking about who you believe you are. It is never about adding more. It is always about subtracting the noise. You were born whole. You were born wise. You were born connected to the divine. And every thought that told you otherwise was an illusion borrowed from a world that forgot how to see. But today you remember, that is the beginning of everything. The moment you begin to observe your thinking without becoming it, something miraculous happens. A quiet space opens up between stimulus and response, between the noise of the world and the whisper of your soul. In that space lives your power not to react, but to choose, not to cling, but to release, not to fear, but to trust. And that single shift from automatic to aware begins to alter the very texture of your life. You stop being dragged by circumstance and start becoming guided by consciousness. You stop trying to control the uncontrollable and begin to align with what is eternal within you. There is no circumstance outside of you that holds more weight than the thoughts you are rehearsing inside you. You may not control what others do, what they say, or what has already happened. But you do control the meaning you assign to it. And meaning is everything. A thought of betrayal can become a teacher of boundaries. A thought of loss can become a doorway to gratitude. A thought of failure can become the seed of wisdom. It all depends on the thinker. We've been conditioned to believe that happiness is circumstantial, that peace is a destination, that worth must be proven. But none of that is true. It never was. The outer world is merely the shadow cast by the shape of your thoughts. And when you sculpt those thoughts with love, with intention, with a gentle but firm sense of presence, the world reflects a beauty that was waiting all along. No spiritual teacher, no enlightened soul ever reached peace by rearranging the furniture of the world. They reached it by rearranging the architecture of their inner world. They learned to master the mind, to see through its tricks, to soften the grip of judgment, and to return again and again to the spaciousness of now. They did not wait for perfect conditions. They created a perfect perception. And that is the invitation for you. The quality of your life is shaped by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Not, why is this happening to me? But what is this showing me? Not, what do I lack? But what is life trying to bring forward in me through this? The quality of your thinking is determined by your willingness to surrender the need to be right, to be certain, to be in control. Because real transformation does not come from control. It comes from trust. It comes from the surrender of false stories and the embrace of the sacred present. You were not born to ruminate in regret or spiral in worry. You were born to create. And your primary creation is the thought you allow to take root in your mind. That thought becomes emotion. That emotion becomes behavior. That behavior becomes character. And character becomes destiny. Trace it all back, and it begins with one silent seed, one thought. So plant well. Think of your thoughts as guests in the temple of your mind. Who are you letting in today? Who are you allowing to sit at the table of your awareness? Are they voices of fear or faith? Are they the voices of past wounds or present miracles? You are the gatekeeper. You are the master gardener. And whatever you nourish within will blossom in the world without. Do not underestimate this power. It is not a metaphor. It is spiritual law. Change the frequency of your thoughts and you will alter the symphony of your life. This is not about positive thinking for the sake of ignoring pain. It is about conscious thinking that acknowledges pain but does not build a home inside it. It is about choosing the higher perspective even when the lower one screams louder. It is about rising not because the world demands it, but because your soul remembers its wings. And yes, there will be days when the old thoughts return, when the inner critic bangs on the door, when the fog sets in again. That's okay. This is not a path of perfection. It is a path of presence. And presence is a practice. Every moment you return to your breath, every moment you observe without judgment, every moment you choose a higher thought that is victory, that is healing, that is awakening. Your thoughts are not who you are. They are passing weather systems in the vast sky of your being. Let them come, let them go, but don't let them build cities without your consent. Don't let them shape your life from unconscious repetition. You are not here to be a mirror of past programming. You are here to be a lighthouse, steady, awake, and rooted in truth. Let go of the belief that change begins outside of you. Let go of the belief that one day, when circumstances are just right, then you'll feel peace. The truth is simpler and more liberating. When you choose peaceful thoughts, your life becomes peaceful. When you think thoughts of compassion, you walk in compassion. When you honor yourself in thought, the world begins to honor you. It's not magic, it's alignment. And alignment begins when the mind remembers its servant role, not its master role. When the ego is seen clearly not as an enemy, but as a confused guide doing its best to protect you through fear. But you, dear soul, do not need to be protected by fear. You need to be liberated by truth. And the truth is this: your thinking shapes your frequency. And your frequency writes the melody your life will play. Then listen deeply now. Not just with your ears, but with the whole of your being, with the space behind your chest where the silence lives, with the gentle fire of awareness that never flickers, no matter how chaotic the world becomes. That space knows your life is not dictated by chance, nor is it controlled by fate. It is directed by the silent compass of your attention, and your attention always flows in the direction of your thoughts. Where your focus goes, your energy grows. Where your energy grows, your reality unfolds. And the seed of it all is thought. So if your life feels noisy, heavy, cluttered with conflict and confusion, the answer is not to rearrange the people around you or chase more distractions. The answer is to cleanse the temple of your mind. Dust off the old assumptions, wash away the fear-stained beliefs, open the windows of perception, and let the light of awareness pour in. Ask yourself, is this thought bringing me closer to freedom or further into suffering? That one question, asked honestly and gently, can save a lifetime of unnecessary pain. You do not need to believe every thought you think. You are not obligated to obey the voices that echo with limitation, fear, or doubt. You are allowed to pause, to breathe, to question. You are allowed to say, I no longer choose to live under that belief. And in that moment, chains begin to fall. Not the kind you see with your eyes, but the kind that have been weighing down your spirit for years. And that release, that sweet, invisible liberation, that is the soul beginning to remember itself. Many people are walking through life asleep to the miracle of their mind, asleep to the truth that heaven and hell are not places we go, but frequencies we choose. A thought of bitterness is a step toward hell. A thought of compassion is a step toward heaven. And these steps, taken moment by moment, build the path your feet will follow. Do not wait for a burning bush. Do not wait for thunder in the sky or a voice to break through the clouds. The voice is already inside you. It speaks in the silence. It speaks when you slow down long enough to hear the deeper questions. What am I rehearsing in my mind each day? What am I practicing with my inner dialogue? And does it serve the life I truly want to live? Because here is the hidden truth. You are always practicing something. Every thought you entertain, every judgment you accept, every fear you repeat, you are strengthening a pathway in your mind. That pathway becomes the direction of your life. So ask yourself, is this a path of light? Is this a path of freedom? Or am I unconsciously paving roads to old prisons? You are not broken. You are not behind. You are simply ready to awaken. That is why these words resonate. Not because they are new, but because they are ancient truths you've always known. Deep down, beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning, beneath the expectations, your soul has always whispered, I am the thinker. I am the chooser. And I am free to choose again. Begin now. Begin today. Let this moment be the turning point, not the dramatic kind that needs lightning bolts or emotional fireworks, but the quiet kind where the soul simply stands up and says, no more thoughts that shrink me, no more stories that shame me, no more identities borrowed from pain. In their place, you begin to plant the seeds of clarity, of love, of worthiness. You begin to think as if life is on your side. You begin to believe that peace is not something to chase, but something to allow. You begin to live from the knowing that you are enough, not because you proved it, but because you remembered it. And that shift, subtle though it may be, is how miracles begin. Because when you change the way you think, you change the way you feel. When you change the way you feel, you change what you believe is possible. And when you change what you believe is possible, the universe rearranges itself to reflect that belief. Not because it was withholding, but because you were. You were withholding permission to receive because you didn't believe you were worthy. You were withholding love because you were afraid of being hurt. You were withholding peace because you thought chaos was your default setting. But now you begin to allow. And allowing begins with a thought. A single thought that whispers, what if the old story is not the truth? And once that thought enters, the whole house of illusion begins to shake. Because the mind that has built its home on fear cannot withstand the gentle wind of truth. That truth is simple. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not the voice that says you'll never make it. You are the awareness that hears that voice and chooses something higher. So today, choose again. Choose the thought that lifts you. Choose the thought that brings you back to stillness. Choose the thought that speaks to your future, not your fear. And when you forget, because you will simply remember that forgetting is part of remembering. Falling asleep is part of waking up. There is no shame in it. Only grace. The quality of your life is not about what you have. It is not about what they think. It is about what you believe, what you nurture, what you entertain in the invisible world of your mind. And that is where your greatest work must begin, not in trying to force the external, but in softening, cleansing, and renewing the internal. Because when the internal world is healed, the external world becomes a mirror of that healing. And you become the light you were seeking. And when you become the light you were seeking, you stop chasing shadows. You stop grasping at empty promises wrapped in noise. You stop running from yourself because you finally realize there is nowhere to run. Everything you've ever wanted was already resting within the quiet space of your own being, waiting for your thoughts to align with its presence, not to earn it, but to see it. To see that your worth was never in question, only in recognition. That love was never absent, only obscured by the fog of conditioned belief. There is a profound shift that happens when you stop thinking in reaction and begin thinking in creation. When you stop allowing every passing fear to dictate your emotional climate and instead become the conscious author of your internal world. In that shift, you stop being a thermometer reacting to the temperature of the world, and you become the thermostat setting the tone of your life from the inside out. That is not philosophy, that is power. That is freedom, that is mastery. It doesn't happen by force, it happens by remembrance. And remembering is a sacred act. It's sitting in stillness long enough to hear the thoughts beneath the thoughts. It's breathing deeply enough to separate the truth from the trauma. It's choosing to become the observer instead of the reactor again and again until the old wiring begins to dissolve and a new way of being begins to rise. You cannot think your way to peace through judgment. You cannot think your way to love through resistance. But you can return always to a thought that is in harmony with who you truly are. A thought of grace, a thought of openness, a thought of I am already enough. And from that thought, a new vibration radiates outward, not in a shout, but in a silent frequency that draws new realities to your feet. Your job is not to fix the world. Your job is to think in alignment with truth and let the world respond to your alignment. That's how reality changes, not from resistance, but from resonance. If you don't like what life is reflecting, look not at the mirror, but at the face you're presenting to it. Change the internal pattern, and the reflection must follow. So many of us are addicted to fixing. We want to fix the job, the relationship, the circumstances. But rarely do we stop to examine the thinking that attracted those circumstances to begin with. And until that examination takes place, we find ourselves repeating the same storylines with different characters. Because the pattern was never out there, it was in here, in the thoughts we chose to believe, in the identities we wore like armor, in the narratives we never questioned. But now you see it. And with that seeing comes choice. And with choice comes healing. And with healing comes liberation. This is your turning point. Not because the stars have aligned, not because the world has suddenly become easier, but because you've decided to no longer abandon yourself with your thoughts. You've decided to no longer speak to yourself in ways you would never speak to another soul. You've decided to no longer give your power away to fleeting fears and old scripts. You've decided at last to come home to yourself. And home is not a place. It is a state of being. It is the vibration of love you allow yourself to rest in. It is the clarity that emerges when the mind softens. It is the deep, unwavering knowing that you are not here to be perfect, but to be whole. Not here to compete, but to contribute. Not here to survive, but to awaken. And awakening begins with thought. Not loud ones, not dramatic ones, but subtle, consistent thoughts of truth. Thoughts like, I am not my past. I am not this fear. I am not a victim of circumstance. I am a divine being, temporarily inhabiting form. I am allowed to think new thoughts. I am allowed to release the old. I am allowed to create a new reality, starting now, and then you do. Not all at once, but moment by moment, thought by thought, and those small shifts begin to gather, like droplets that become a stream, a current, a river, and finally a sea of transformation. You look around and the world seems to smile back, not because it has changed, but because you have. Your thinking has softened, your frequency has elevated, and the quality of your life has become the natural result. And as you continue on this path, not forward, but inward, you begin to realize that life has always been speaking to you in the language of reflection. Not punishment, not reward, but feedback. It shows you again and again the quality of your thoughts made visible. If your world is chaotic, perhaps your inner world has been cluttered. If your days feel heavy, perhaps your thoughts have been weighted by beliefs that no longer serve you. This is not to blame, this is to empower. Because if thought created it, thought can change it. You are not here to control every outcome. You are here to master your inner response to each outcome. That mastery is not stoicism, it is sacred receptivity. It is the art of choosing peace without the need for perfection. It is the quiet strength of being grounded in awareness, no matter what storms may come. And that grounding begins with one sacred habit: choosing higher thoughts. This is not about positive thinking as a mask. This is about truthful thinking as a mirror. Thinking that does not pretend life is perfect, but sees clearly that you are not the victim of it. That even when you do not control the wind, you can still set your sail, and your thoughts are the sail. So when the day begins, ask yourself, what direction will I sail today? Will you drift with the currents of fear? Will you replay the grievances of yesterday and call it truth? Will you grip tightly to your judgments and call it strength? Or will you release, not because you're giving up, but because you're waking up? Waking up to the truth that your mind is not a prison unless you let it become one. Your power lies in awareness. Awareness that watches thought without clinging to it. Awareness that sees a fearful thought and smiles gently, saying, I hear you, but I do not follow you. Awareness that witnesses an old wound rising and says, I understand. And I choose to bless it, not repeat it. This is the quiet revolution, the inner uprising that changes everything not by force but by vision, by returning to the truth that thought is creative, not reactive, that your experience of life is not happening to you, but through you, through the lens of your beliefs, through the patterns of your focus, through the tone of your self-talk. Speak to yourself kindly, not because it's trendy, but because your cells are listening, your nervous system is listening, your energy field is listening, and every thought you repeat becomes a vibration in your body, a signal to your reality, a prophecy unfolding in silence. So, speak with reverence, even when you're tired, even when you're unsure, especially when you're afraid. That is when the power of your thinking becomes sacred. That is when you step not into illusion, but into alignment, into truth, into love. Not love as sentiment, but love as vibration, love as clarity. Love as the refusal to think thoughts that betray your divinity. Let your thinking become a prayer, not with folded hands, but with an open mind. Let every thought be a candle lit in the dark room of unconsciousness. Let your inner dialogue reflect your divine inheritance, not your conditioned past. You are not here to rehearse wounds. You are here to remember wholeness. And when you forget, as we all do, return again. Return to the breath, return to the stillness, return to the observer within you who has never been harmed, never been afraid, never been less than divine. That witness within you is your anchor. And when your thinking returns to that awareness, the world begins to respond in kind. You may notice people treating you differently. You may find synchronicities arriving with more ease. You may watch as what once felt like effort begins to feel like flow. This is not coincidence. This is coherence. Coherence between who you are, how you think, and what you allow yourself to feel. And when that coherence is present, miracles are not rare, they are natural. Because miracles are not events. They are perceptions. They are shifts in thinking from fear to love, from lack to trust, from separation to unity. And the more often you allow that shift in the quiet space of your mind, the more your entire life becomes a sanctuary of grace. You were never broken. You were only believing broken thoughts. You were never unworthy. You were only echoing unworthy beliefs. You were never disconnected. You were only distracted. And now you remember. You remember that every thought is a paintbrush, and your life is the canvas. Paint with intention. Paint with vision. Paint with love. Because the masterpiece of your life is not made with your hands, it's made with your mind. Then let us keep walking gently, steadily, down this sacred path of remembering. Because remembering who you are is not a grand announcement, not a mountaintop moment with trumpets and crowds. It is a soft return, a humble realignment with the center of your being. And that return begins with a single conscious thought. I no longer choose to think in opposition to my soul. You see, the soul doesn't argue. It doesn't scream. It doesn't compete for your attention. It simply waits quietly, faithfully, lovingly beneath the chatter of the mind. And when your thinking finally slows, when you stop rehearsing the noise long enough to be still, you feel it. That calm, sacred knowing, that presence that cannot be described, only experienced. That is who you are beneath the thoughts. But most people never meet that presence because they are too busy managing a mind that was never taught how to rest. A mind trained in survival, not serenity. A mind so addicted to solving problems that it forgets the greatest solution is often surrender. And here's the paradox. The more you try to control your thinking through force, the more chaotic it becomes. Because the ego loves a fight, but the soul whispers, there is nothing to fight. There is only something to release. So release it. Release the idea that your thoughts define you. Release the belief that your worth must be earned. Release the illusion that peace is conditional. And in that releasing, you begin to rise, not with effort, but with ease. Because the heavy thoughts fall away, and what remains is light. And what is light always remembers how to rise. The quality of your life, beloved, is not about the things you can accumulate, not about the titles you can achieve, not even about the milestones you cross. The quality of your life is about the quality of your presence. And presence is the gift you give yourself when your thoughts no longer drag you away from the now. In this moment here, now there is no problem. There is only breath. There is only being. And there is the choice right here to think a thought that brings you closer to peace. A thought that opens the window rather than slams the door. A thought that loves instead of judges. A thought that forgives instead of punishes. A thought that lifts instead of locks. And yes, you are allowed to choose those thoughts, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because those are the moments that shape the landscape of your life. Anyone can think beautifully when things are easy, but to think lovingly in the face of fear, to think kindly when the world is cruel, to think abundantly when the bank account says otherwise, that is the true power of spiritual maturity. That is the fire of awakened thinking. That is the light that cannot be put out by circumstance. You are not your old reactions. You are not your unconscious habits. You are not your childhood programming. You are not your inner critic. You are not your inherited shame. You are not the wounds of your lineage. You are the sky that holds it all. You are the space between the thoughts. You are the stillness beneath the storm. And in that stillness, you are free. From this stillness, begin again. Begin thinking in the language of truth. I am here. I am whole. I am aligned. I am willing. I am enough. You don't need the world to agree with you to think in alignment with love. You don't need proof to think in alignment with abundance. You don't need apologies to think in alignment with forgiveness. The outer world does not need to shift first. You do. And once you do, the world, as if by divine reflection, follows. Not always instantly, Not always in the ways you expect, but always faithfully, because your outer world is a delayed reflection of your inner devotion. So devote yourself to thoughts that heal, to thoughts that build, to thoughts that honor your sacredness. Devote yourself to thinking like someone who knows they are connected to Source, because you are. You always have been. No thought can sever that connection. But every thought can either obscure it or reveal it. Choose the thoughts that reveal. Choose the thoughts that set you free. Choose the thoughts that invite miracles. Because when the quality of your thinking rises, your whole life becomes a reflection of heaven lived on earth. And the door to that heaven is always unlocked. You simply need to think your way home. Then let us in, not with noise, but with a whisper, the kind that reaches deeper than any shout ever could. Your life is not waiting on the outside. It is blooming from the inside. You are not here to collect thoughts like trophies or chase perfection through the mind. You are here to think in alignment with the truth you already are. So pause, breathe, and remember, the quality of your life is the quality of the thoughts you nurture when no one else is listening. Choose thoughts that return you to peace. Choose thoughts that remember your wholeness. Choose thoughts that make room for grace. And when in doubt, choose love. Because the most powerful thought you will ever think is, I already am. And from that knowing, everything changes forever.